You're someone who wants to really understand the world, maybe get a handle on those complex topics without feeling like you're, wading through just tons of information.
Right. Exactly.
That's the whole idea behind the deep dive. We're kind of your shortcut to being truly well informed. We take the sources you care about and pull out the insights that actually matter.
Yeah, we sift through the dense stuff, find those key takeaways, those moments that give you a real aha feeling.
And for this deep dive, we are tackling a really interesting question. It came from a document one of you shared, HJKCI 2015.pdf.
Oh, yes, that one.
It's a South Korean study looking at skills and, importantly, how much people earn in STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, and math.
And the core question, the thing we're really trying to get at, is whether STEM professionals in South Korea are, well, financially rewarded in a way that matches all the education and specialized skills they have.
Which seems like it should be the case, doesn't it?
You'd think so.
Yeah.
Logically, yes.
Yeah.
But the data, it suggests something else might be going on.
So to figure this out, the study uses some pretty solid data sources. There's the Korea Employment Information Services Occupational Classification System from 2012.
Right, that helps sort out the different jobs.
And the Employment Survey on Labor Conditions by Employment Type, also 2012. So it's a detailed look at the South Korean job market from that time.
Our mission then for this deep dive is to cut through the academic language and get right to the core issue.
Okay.
How do the skills needed for STEM jobs in South Korea compare to what people actually earn?
Especially when we put them side by side with professionals in, well, non-STEM fields?
Exactly. That comparison is key.
Okay, let's get into it. The study uses this specific term, doko or ko, for STEM professionals. Now, this isn't just anyone with a STEM degree, right? It's about how these jobs are classified.
Precisely. They're dokogo. They're defined here based on the International Standard Classification of Occupations, ISCO 08.
ISCO 08, okay.
Think of it as a global system for grouping jobs based on skills. And within ISCO 08, these STEM roles are categorized as professionals needing skill level 4.
Skill level 4. What does that translate to, practically?
It essentially means jobs that typically need a university degree, plus a deep grasp of pretty complex ideas. The kind of knowledge you expect from a professional.
Got it. And the study links this to specific Korean codes, too.
Yes, within the Korean Standard Occupational Classification. It points to codes like 13, some managerial roles, 21 science pros, 22 ICT pros and techs, and 23 engineering pros and techs.
So quite a wide range covering some really important sectors.
And what's really interesting here, I think, is the emphasis on the type of thinking these jobs require.
Okay.
According to the Korean Occupational Dictionary, a core part of these STEM pro roles is needing analysis rated level 5 or higher when dealing with data.
Analysis of data level 5 or higher, that sounds pretty demanding.
It is. It's not just about handling data. It's about breaking it down, interpreting it, drawing conclusions. Really high-level stuff.
So definitely jobs needing serious brain power. The ISA definition gives some examples, right? Like research, maybe medical fields.
Exactly. It mentions research, development, and medical activities, teaching like university level, and potentially some business, legal, or social service roles if they require that strong science or tech foundation.
Okay. So we know who they are. What about getting there? What does the study say about the pathway into these jobs?
Well, this is another key finding. It turns out that these STEM professionals in South Korea generally need to spend more time getting educated and developing skills compared to others.
More time than non-STEM professionals?
Yes, and also more time than people in non-professional jobs. The numbers really lay it out.
Let's hear them.
Okay, average education time for STEM pros, 15.2 years.
16.2. Wow.
Compare that to 15.32 years for non-STEM professionals, still high, but less. And then non-professionals were down at 11.96 years. So a clear difference in schooling right away.
And skills development, does that add much more time?
It does. The study looked at the average time needed to get the skills for the job after education. For STEM pros, it's about 7.02 years.
7 years.
Again, longer than non-STEM pros, who are at 6.72 years, and much longer than non-professionals at just 2.51 years.
Great, let's just sort of unpack that for a second. If you add education and skill development, 16.2 plus 7.02.
You get 23.22 years.
23 years, that's a massive chunk of life invested before you're even fully up and running, potentially.
It's a huge commitment of time and effort. It really underlines the investment these individuals make.
And the work itself. You mentioned data analysis being key.
Right. The study looked at job functions. STEM pros scored highest on average for dealing with data 6.32 on their scale. They also work significantly with things, averaging 3.84.
And people.
People functions were notable too, 4.76 average. The study references a chart, 82, showing this visually. So complex roles involving data, things, and people.
Okay, so highly educated, long training, complex analytical jobs. Now, you hinted before that the pay might not match up. This is where it gets really interesting, isn't it?
This is the core finding, really. Despite everything we just discussed, higher skills, longer education, these STEM professionals, on average, earn less than non-STEM professionals.
Less? How much less are we talking?
Okay, the average monthly earnings back in 2012, STEM pros, made 3,925,300 Korean won.
Okay, about 3.9 million.
But the non-STEM professionals, PIRA and PAO, they averaged 4,703,501.
Whoa, that's nearly 800,000 won more per month for the non-STEM group.
Exactly. And non-professionals were much lower, around 2.2 million won for context. But the crucial comparison is within that professional group, STEM versus non-STEM.
That immediately makes you think about opportunity cost, right? All those extra years studying.
Precisely. Time they could have been earning elsewhere. If the eventual salary doesn't compensate for that lost income and extra effort, well, you can see how that might be a factor for people choosing careers.
Did the study look at that, like pay relative to the time invested?
It did. They analyzed log wages divided by those required education and skill periods, a sort of return on time invested measure mentioned in relation to their DO4.
Yeah.
And it showed STEM professionals had lower returns relative to the time they put in compared to non-STEM pros.
So the payoff for the extra years wasn't quite there, financially speaking.
Seems that way based on this data.
Yeah.
And they dug deeper using statistical methods like OLS regression.
Okay, regression analysis. That helps isolate the effect of being in STEM, controlling for other things.
Exactly. They controlled for education level, experience, demographics, even company size. And even then, STEM pros in jobs heavy on data analysis earned about 1.5% less than non-STEM pros in similar high data jobs.
Only 1.5%. That doesn't sound huge initially.
But wait. When they also added controls for the actual time spent in education and skill development, those 23 years we talked about,
Okay.
that wage disadvantage, that penalty for STEM pros in high data roles jumped to minus 6.6% compared to other high data pros.
Minus 6.6%. Okay, that's more noticeable.
And compared to occupations more broadly, the penalty was minus 18%.
18% less. That's substantial.
Very. And they did another analysis controlling for specific job skill indicators, data, people, things, functions, work intensity, physical demands. Even then, STEM pros earned 8.9% less than general occupations and 5.9% less than other professionals in similar high data roles.
So whichever way they cut it, this wage penalty kept showing up.
Consistently, yes. STEM professionals seem to be earning less than you'd expect given their background and job demands.
Did they look at different income levels within STEM? Like maybe top earners do okay.
They did, using something called quantile regression. It lets you see if the effect is different for lower earners versus higher earners.
And what did that show? This is fascinating.
Well, it added another layer. For STEM folks in the lower earning brackets, there might actually be a small wage premium, a slight advantage.
Oh, okay. So maybe it's better at the entry level.
Possibly. But here's the kicker. For those STEM professionals in the top earnings percentiles,
Yes.
they experienced a significant and apparently growing wage penalty.
Growing. So the gap gets wider the higher up you go.
That's what the analysis suggests,
Yeah.
referencing their T6 and T7. The most skilled, presumably highest performing STEM professionals seem to be the ones facing the biggest relative disadvantage in pay compared to their non-STEM peers.
Wow. That really turns expectations upside down, doesn't it? You'd think the top talent would command the highest premium.
You would. And it really points towards potentially a more fundamental issue in how these top-tier STEM roles are valued in the market, at least back in 2012 in South Korea.
So what does this all mean? What are the implications here?
Well, the study connects these dots directly to career choices. It suggests this whole situation might explain why some talented individuals could be, well, hesitant to go into STEM fields.
Because the financial reward doesn't seem to match the required investment and skill.
Exactly. Why go through all that demanding education and training if the payoff isn't clearly better or even worse than other professional paths?
But maybe STEM grads just get better jobs more easily. Does that offset it?
That's a fair question. The researchers looked into that too. They checked if STEM graduates had a higher probability of actually landing professional or managerial roles compared to grads from other fields.
Did they?
They analyzed data from the Korea Labor and Income Panel study, several years of it, and they found the probability for STEM grads becoming managers or professionals was only slightly higher than for humanities and social science grads.
Only slightly.
Yes, and sometimes similar if you just looked at manager roles,
Hmm.
and significantly lower probability than for medical or education graduates. That data is in their Table 9.
So no huge advantage in just getting a professional job, it seems.
Not a massive one based on this data. Plus, they mentioned something called asymmetric mobility.
Asymmetric mobility
It
means.
means it seems relatively easier for a STEM graduate to move sideways into a non-STEM professional job, perhaps leveraging their analytical skills in finance or management, for example. But it's much harder for someone without a STEM background to jump into a specialized STEM role.
Ah, I see. So STEM grads might move out, but non-STEM grads don't easily move in.
Right. So that slight edge in getting a professional job initially doesn't seem to fully compensate for the lower earnings potential highlighted earlier.
So the study basically concludes this wage penalty is a pretty big deal.
Yes, they frame it as a significant factor potentially driving top talent away from or out of STEM careers in South Korea.
Okay, let's try and sum this up then. What's the core insight from this deep dive?
I think the clearest picture is this.
Hmm.
Despite needing more education, more skill development, and having highly demanding jobs crucial for innovation,
Yeah.
STEM professionals in South Korea, based on this 2012 data, faced a demonstrable wage penalty compared to their non-STEM professional counterparts with similar skill levels.
And it's not just a small gap. The data really suggests it gets worse for the top earners, which could definitely discourage the brightest sparks, right?
Absolutely. It can make the very people you most want in those fields think twice.
Which leaves us, and you listening, with a pretty big question to ponder.
Mm-hmm. What are the wider implications of this for innovation, for economic growth, for the whole future of science and technology in South Korea?
Right. If the market isn't fully valuing these skills financially, what kind of incentives or changes might be needed to fix that imbalance?
How do you make sure you attract and, just as importantly, keep the best minds in these vital fields?
Definitely food for thought. Thanks for taking this deep dive with us into a really important topic.